Let me preface this by saying we were kids doing things we shouldn't have with nobody knowing where we were or the dangers we were in. Fall was settling in the city of Richmond, Virginia. This time of year in Richmond is cool and the air is crisp. The leaves on large oak trees have already fallen, covering the forest floor with deep beds of dead leaves. I was staying at a friend's, John, house one weekend, and with John having access to a private boat club located on a more rural part of the river, we both decided it would be the weekend of outdoors. We snuck out of his house around 10 p.m. that night, as his parents would never knowingly let us go out to the river alone, especially at night. This night was especially dark and quiet as we walked through several miles of windy backroads and cut through some woods before arriving at the boat club. When I say boat club, I mean a small log cabin with a couple canoes and a boat access for members to drop off small river fishing boats. That night nobody was down there except for myself and John. We lit a fire and began to put together the camping gear we had brought into the canoe, already sitting down on the edge of the water. We had packed a couple peanut butter and mayo sandwiches with some granola bars. We brought 2 hammocks instead of tents. But we didn't forget the essentials: a couple packs of Marlboro Red cigarettes and a case of natural light beer. Again, we were kids and thought we were on top of the world because of this. Before I knew it, we were paddling out through the darkness to find us a camping spot for the night. The water was glassy with the moon reflecting off of the surface to give us some sort of sense of where we were going. We continued floating out until the small fire we left at the cabin was no longer visible. John pointed out a small island with a small stream on one side and the main river on the other, just a couple hundred yards ahead. We decided to set up camp here for the night. We pulled up onto the shore, and while John set up the hammocks in a nest of trees at the point of the island, I began building a fire down beside the small river stream. The temperature was drastically dropping, as this was a time where phones weren't able to check the weather and we really had no idea what we were walking into cold-wise. The fire took some time, but it eventually got built, and we sat exhaustedly beside it on the rock, smoking sweet cigarettes and drinking beer until we both decided we were too cold and ready to try and go to sleep. John went to the hammock more in the middle of the island, and I wrapped up in a hammock closer to the stream. On the other side of the stream was roughly a mile of woods before hitting another back road that led back to the city. I laid there for hours in the freezing cold, wondering why in the world I decided this would be a good idea. I was still wearing 2 layers of clothes with jeans and socks, unable to get warm. It was probably 3 a.m. at this point, and I was regretting even getting in the canoe at this point, knowing I would have to pack everything up and go all the way back to John's house, repeating all the previous steps before his mom woke up in just a couple hours. I was speaking out loud trying to see if John was still awake, but he had somehow managed to fall asleep. So alone I was staring up through the trees and the clouds to catch glimpses of stars still shining hot in the sky above. I eventually started to doze off when I thought I heard someone walking along the banks of the stream on the side of the woods. I would hear the leaves crunch and then a couple minutes later hear a twig snap. I got up and looked around, trying to see if my mind was tricking me or if an animal was trying to get water or come steal the now frozen sandwiches we had brought, but every time I saw nothing. As the time went on, the noises became more and more frequent. I would hear a tree shake or leaves crush, followed by quick twig snaps, as if something was crawling through the adjacent woods. Was something studying me and my movements as I would respond to the noises by sticking my head up out of the hammock and staring into the woods for a couple seconds before laying back down? I don't know, but everything came to a halt when I heard something or someone step into the water. I froze solid still as footsteps across the stream towards where me and John were lying came closer and closer. This time I didn't stick my head up to look, but wrapped myself tighter in the hammock as if the parachute material would protect me from whatever was coming closer. The air around me suddenly felt hot and humid, and an odor or rot surrounded the camp. From where I was wrapped I could barely see the ropes of John's hammock attached to a tree 15 yards away. I was praying he would wake up so he could be aware of the imminent threat, but not a sound or sign of consciousness coming from that hammock made me feel even less safe. The heat and smell slowly passed by me as wet heavy footsteps climbed the rocks from my hammock towards John's. I still laid silent and perfectly still as I watched the open of John's hammock begin to swing back and forth slowly. Still no noise. Then, suddenly out of pure silence I watched a black hand reach over towards the rope. The hand had long fingers with hair covering the majority of any visible skin and was obviously not human. As soon as the hand appeared it disappeared, but this time so did the silence. A loud snap and thud followed the rope of John's hammock. I could hear whatever the creature was dragging and sliding down the rocks and into the water before sprinting into the woods. I finally was able to stick my head back out to look, but nothing was there. Nothing. No footprints, no drag marks, no John. He and his hammock were gone. I rolled out of the hammock and ran down to the stream, crossing it frantically looking for my friend. Deeper into the woods I ran, calling out his name, making sure to keep the campsite and island in my view so I wouldn't get lost. I stopped suddenly when I could smell that same rot again, and the air suddenly became humid around me. I heard someone calling my name loudly from behind me and turned around to see John standing by my hammock with a puzzled look on his face, quickly followed by a look of terror. I slowly turned around as John was no longer looking at me but over me. As I turned slowly, I could feel my heart beat in my neck and time slowed down to make seconds feel like hours. I knew in the back of my mind I had been successfully hunted. Whatever was stalking me had won. The creature that had been watching my every move was going to be standing directly behind me, and I was no longer going to be alive. But I turned anyways, wanting to face my fate head on. I finally started to see a tall black figure enter my vision, with the sound of heavy breathing coming from above my head. I was now facing the chest of something I could never even begin to explain. Something not human but not animal. Something on the earth for the sole reason to hunt and torment. My head and eyes immediately went to look up and make eye contact with the devil that had hunted me down to every last movement. My chin tilted up and my eyes started to move up from the chest of the creature. Cold. Black. Nothing.